Hello and welcome to another episode of God-Sized Stories. I'm very blessed to have a ministry episode once again, and I have Corey with us today. Corey, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Craig, for the opportunity to be here. My name's Corey Cabe. I live in Normal, Illinois, just south of Chicago, a couple hours. Married to Megan. We're coming up in a couple weeks on our 25-year wedding anniversary,
Woo!
and we have 6 children. Our oldest is a junior at Illinois State University. We have twin boys getting ready to graduate from University High School. And we have 3 others at U High as well. Our youngest 2 through adoption.
Oh.
So 4 boys, 2 girls, and a dog, and living large with 5 high schoolers and a
Yeah.
college student.
Woo!
So
Man, I can't imagine, I think about my grocery bill. I can't imagine your grocery bill with that many teenagers in your house. Oh my God.
yeah,
Oh,
several of them are runners, so they're pounding the calories, and we're wearing out running shoes. So yeah,
oh
the
boy.
budget's gotten a little tight in the last few years.
Well, I'm super excited to have you on today to talk about the ministry that you work with. So, why don't you tell us a little bit of the intro of what your ministry is?
Yeah. So I'm privileged to work here at Lifesong for Orphans. Lifesong has been around for about 22 years
Hmm.
and really has a pretty interesting origin story. We started out of a small farming community here, Gridley, Illinois. There was an individual here, Gary Ringer, who was in business with his father years ago. They started in the pig feed business, a lot of farmers in this area. Gary had visited a food plant and got inspired, wanted to start a food company.
Hmm.
At the time, his vision was he wanted to grow a company, retire young, live the American dream.
Hmm.
They started in business and were really struggling for a while. He started going through some depression and really questioning, what am I doing here? And Gary's a man of faith. And so really ramped up his prayer life at that time and felt like God was challenging him to not give up on business, but shift his paradigm. And so he and his father wrote out a covenant at that point that if this business ever succeeded, which it was struggling at the time, that they would use it for kingdom purposes, whatever that meant. Fast forward several years later, and in 2002, Ringer Foods had grown to a pretty good sized food company, and they ended up getting an offer from an international company. So they sold, and they used a portion of the proceeds to reinvest in some business, but then a large portion into a foundation. The start of their journey, they were praying about what does God have for us with his resources. They knew of a couple families that were in the adoption process, and just the cost of adoption, it can be pretty overwhelming for most families. And so they felt like they didn't want to see these families go into a ton of debt. So they provided some financial resources and realized, hey, maybe there's more Christian families out there that would consider adoption if the resources were available. So the initial thing they did from the foundation, it was called TMG, the Manna Group Foundation, was provide adoption grants to Christian families, matching grants typically, where then that family would go raise support through
Wow.
their local church, their friends and families to have a multiplying effect. So did that one by one over the first few years. In 2003, they were invited to go on a vision trip to Ukraine. There was a woman there that was involved in orphan care, more humanitarian aid, bringing supplies into orphanages. She worked with a young Ukrainian man that was helping translate. He had a vision to grow this into more of a ministry that focused on breaking the orphan cycle,
Mm.
getting the local church involved. And so this woman was aging, wanted to pass this on. The organization was called Life International, so we stepped into orphan care at that point, and within a year realized there was another Life International here in the US, and so had to go through a name change and became Lifesong for Orphans at that point. Both the adoption and orphan care aspects of the ministry continued to grow. We got involved in other countries other than Ukraine, Zambia, India, Ethiopia being some of the early ones. And we also started partnering with local churches here in the US to provide what we called an adoption fund,
Mm.
where we administered it for free and we now work with over 500 churches that have an adoption fund with Lifesong that then their families can apply for funding. We provide kind of that back office administrative piece to it. So over the years, we've helped over 10,000 children come home through adoption. We're probably approaching 11,000 in the next several months through that adoption grant funding piece. And then also, we are now in 15 different countries internationally, about 20 different sites or ministries in those countries, schools, children's homes. We've tried to develop some businesses,
Hmm.
working with close to 10,000 orphans through those ministries. So really trying to go deep with each one. I can talk more about that, but I'll pause for some additional
Right,
questions.
right. It's so encouraging, and it's like there's a theme I hear through a lot of these ministry episodes where people like you're talking about this family that they were just like, God, I don't know what it is, but it's yours. And he
Yep.
like multiplies. And hearing the fact
Yeah.
of like the sheer numbers of kids and not just kids, just families that you're helping is just mind blowing to me because like Jesus commands us. He tells us like, hey, take care of the widows and the orphans, and
Yep.
we will always have. And this is the thing too. We will always have the poor. They will always exist, and calls us to care for them. And it when I see people like that that are have such a zeal, I'm like, yes, 'Cause,
Yeah. Yeah.
like I work
And it's a
with kids.
fish and loaves situation, right?
Yes,
Fish and loaves where we didn't
exactly.
have much. God blessed it. He multiplies it through his people. And it's literally because of hundreds and hundreds of churches, volunteers, givers. I mean, there are a lot of people, and we're just trying to help support, serve, mobilize, those people. So,
Because we have a wonderful mutual connection of a pastor friend of mine that at one point was a missionary
yep.
through you guys, like as part of the thing with you guys, where it was working at a children's orphanage home, kind of. And I
Yep.
was like so excited hearing him talk about his background with that, which is why he's like, you got to talk to these people. They're doing
Mhm.
kingdom work over there, and it's like it's so much more than I even was like what he was saying, and it was like I was getting this, and now it's like this,
Yeah.
but I'm sure it's like it wouldn't even fit in the screen. We're hearing those numbers is exciting. So
Yeah.
for the people at home that might be like excited like I am right now, how can they get involved?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of different ways. We often say part of our approach is to help serve the church, serve God's people through some would choose to give, some would choose to go, some would choose to adopt. And so, yeah, I mean, prayer is the first piece. There are so many things happening in our world right now that are completely out of our control.
Mm,
Several of the places that we are serving, Ukraine being one of them, are just, I mean, in a lot of turmoil with the war going on there. We have a couple different ministry partners or projects in Haiti
mm,
that schools and businesses down there that are really having a hard time being sustained because of all the gang violence and unrest that's in that country. Ethiopia's had a lot of unrest recently. And so we're quick to go to prayer here at Lifesong.
mm,
We meet actually every day at 11 for a time of devotion and prayer with our team, recognizing that, I mean, this is God's work. These are his kids, his resources, and we're stewarding those. So we would invite anyone who gets to know us to join us in prayer.
mm,
We often send out a monthly prayer update with some specific requests just based on what's going on around the different projects. Um, Giving is an easy way to plug in. We have things like child sponsorship, so actual connection with some of the kids that we serve internationally, or just general giving. And it can be specifically to a location if people have ties to a certain country or area, or it can be just unrestricted giving. We periodically have opportunities to go see the work,
mm,
and our international travel post COVID has gotten a little trickier with for different reasons.
mhm.
But yeah, we try to get people there to see the work, to potentially support it through mission trips. So that'd be another way. And then advocate. I'm sure anybody listening to this has people in their circles that may be adopting, may be fostering. Make sure they're aware of the resources that Lifesong offers, and then also just keep an eye out for them, come alongside, say, don't even ask like if they need anything, but
Mm.
offer, certain specifics. Hey, can I bring you a meal? Can I help with this, help with that? Because most families have needs and they're not going to necessarily ask for help,
Mhm.
but that's what the church is there for, right? To come alongside those who are in need. So
Absolutely. I related to that question. So, because yes, adoption. I know tons of people that are huge in that. That's a huge part of my family background as well. Maybe they're listening and they're interested in adoption. At what point would they then come to you guys? Like, would
yeah,
like once they're
it's a
already
good question.
starting, or like I don't even know where to start. Would they come to you?
Yeah. Yeah, we get calls like that periodically. Hey, I'm praying about or interested in adoption. We will often direct them to either an agency, an adoption agency, or we have another ministry partner we know of called Loving Shepherd International. And they do, I believe they have some pre-adoption kind of screening where you can fill out some inventories or surveys that kind of help guide the process. We work with several adoption agencies, Lifeline Children's Services out of Birmingham, CCAI out of Denver, Colorado, All God's Children International, and many, many more. But a family would typically start there with an agency. And then when they've gone through a home study and essentially gotten to that point in the adoption process, we invite Christian families to apply for funding. Again, matching grants, fundraising tools, and like to come alongside those families to help them complete the adoption.
Mhm. Now, is that?
We all
Well, go ahead.
One other thing, we also do some post-adoptive care. So
Hmm.
if people are listening and they know of families that are struggling, I mean, adoption, along with adoption, brings some history, some loss, some attachment bonding issues at times, and so we're seeing more and more families that have adopted come back and inquire about resources and support for some of the struggles that they're in, and
Yeah,
we've been blessed to come alongside many families in that way as well. So,
that's encouraging. Now there's a couple families I can think of this afternoon that I might have to message like,
yeah,
hey, check these guys out because exactly that. Because when you're plugging someone into a family, you're changing the dynamics.
yeah,
So,
yeah. There's often needs for support.
mhm. Now, one last question on that adoption side too. Do you guys support all forms? Like, well, you support obviously. Do you help invest in adoptions that are both national and international?
Yes, yeah, yeah. We have families adopting from all over the world, and many, many here in the U.S. So yeah.
Okay. No bio.
And our what I will say is people can go to our website, lifesong.org, LIFO, I'm sorry, LIFESONG.org to check it out. We have a section in there about adoption and kind of our processes. The other thing I'll say is Lifesong has always had what we call our 100% pledge.
Mm,
And what that means is when we partner with a church or we accept a family and provide funding for them to fundraise for their adoption, or we come alongside international orphan care, 100% of what's given to those things, it goes to the family
mm,
or to the orphan care project. We don't take anything out administrative. We have some other, sources or incomes to support the overhead of the
right.
organization. So that's pretty unique
That
for a
is
ministry to be able to offer.
wow. So the kind of the final thing we'll do then to wrap it up, and I love that you already referenced it, which is the idea of prayer. Prayer is obviously to us as believers the most powerful thing. And you said you all get together for prayer every day. How can those at home pray for you specifically and Lifesong, the ministry as a whole today? Because maybe they can't get involved. Maybe they're still early in the process of these things. They're not sure. Obviously, be praying about that. But otherwise, how can they pray for you all?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a God-sized problem that none of us are going to solve on our own. Again, we're just stewards in this space. And so we often ask for prayers for wisdom, when to say yes, when to say no, because we can't do everything. prayers for wisdom and discernment. I definitely would say pray for our folks internationally that are in situations of great struggle. I referenced a few today between Ukraine, Haiti, Ethiopia. There's a lot of physical war going on around our world and then a ton of spiritual warfare. We of course pray for each and every child that we work with. We want them to know Jesus. We want them to get a good education. We want them to be cared for well and safely. And then we also want them to transition into productive adult life, become leaders in their communities and their churches and their families, Lord willing, break that orphan cycle. So that's a big journey, generational journey, but we would pray for those ripples to happen.
Amen. I love those ripples. They're so beautiful to see, and sometimes they're not that hard to make. Yeah. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
as simple as
Yep.
saying yes. God,
Yep.
send me.
Yeah, there are so many people along the way that have said yes in one form or fashion, and I think of one family that's their mantra was to put their yes on the table and see what God was asking of them, and they were stepping out in faith multiple times, sometimes in very challenging situations, challenging adoptions,
Mm.
but their faith and their example has impacted many, not only in their own family, but those that have seen their testimony. So may we all put our yes on the table.
Yes. Well, Corey, thank you so much. For one, the stuff I was referencing earlier, just being willing to say the yes in your life and just to serve, because there's so many kids around the world and locally that need us. And there's so many families that, like, the adoption process is not easy. And it's not
Right.
like to have something like you guys there to go hand in hand and be like, hey, this is one less thing to maybe worry about. Man, like that, because there's enough other things to think about, let alone this stuff. So thank you for just taking that charge, taking that call, being just, and then as well, like all the stuff in your life, like being a father, raising that many kids, having adoption be important to your family. Like you're not just saying these things, you're doing these things. Like it's easy sometimes to say go and do. It's not always so easy to actually go and do yourself.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a daily challenge, right? To die to ourselves and keep moving forward, but it's a great privilege too. I think many of us who have said yes to things, it can be a struggle, but we all often are the ones most blessed by it and
Mhm.
can't imagine our family any different than it is. And God called us twice to adopt, and it's been a great blessing for us. So
Amen.
pray that if anybody's considering it, that you'd be encouraged by the Lord.
Well, Corey, thank you so much again. And audience, thank you as always for listening. I couldn't do this without you. Goodbye.